You're listening to the Move to Include podcast. I'm Noelle Evans. BJ Stasio was a young man just out of college when he first learned about something called the marriage penalty. Here's how it works. People with disabilities who rely on Social Security or Medicaid are often discouraged or even penalized for getting married. It can mean losing income or healthcare benefits. When he learned about this, BJ says he was activated. He couldn't take the injustice of it, and he reached out to an organization called the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State, or SANES. That set him on a journey to becoming a self-advocate and disability rights activist. The more he advocated for himself, the more he found himself advocating for others. For the last 20 years, that's what he's done as a peer advocate with the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, or OPWDD. But despite years of activism, the marriage penalty persists. Later in the episode, we'll talk with disability rights attorney Stephanie Woodward. She'll help us unpack the federal benefits eligibility rules that perpetuate it. But first, my conversation with BJ. BJ, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here and glad to educate about disability rights and sharing your story and talking about all the things we're going to talk about today.
I can't wait. So, talking about self-advocacy, do you mind just sharing what that is to you, how you define it?
Well, yes, self-advocacy is speaking for oneself and for others, and I find myself always thinking about speaking for others because my story is also their story, because people who are going through the same things as I am have a lot of similarities in what's happening in their life. So I try not to tell my story directly, but combine my story with other people's story.
Where does it begin for you, in terms of stepping into self-advocacy? Did you know it was a space that you could be in?
No, I kind of found it by a fortunate internet search. I was looking for something to do after college because I have a computer programming degree, but nobody wanted to hire a guy with a disability, so I needed to find something to do, and I kind of was thinking maybe someday there will be somebody who will love me and want to marry me. So I started doing some research about something I knew about the SSI marriage penalty and wanted to fix that for other people because I've heard a lot of other people's story. I didn't have a story yet because I didn't have a relationship yet, so I was just searching around and ended up coming across the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State and asked them to help me with the marriage penalty because I realized there were some states that were already out against it and trying to get rid of it on the federal level. So I wanted New York State to join that, and That's kind of how my journey into self-advocacy got started.
The marriage penalty, exactly what you're talking about, what that is. You're saying Social Security income benefits being eliminated if somebody chooses to marry.
Well,
if they are disabled, right?
Yes. Well, actually, it's actually considered, say if it's two people who are disabled who choose to get married. Let's just take it from that point of view. The two checks become one check between the couple. And even if you decide not to marry, let's say you identify yourself as a couple and you're living together, you will get nailed from Social Security what is called holding out. And they'll penalize you for that because you admitted you were in a relationship with somebody like that. That's why I never say, oh, don't say you're a couple. Just say you're living together because nobody needs to know that.
Holding out, you can be in trouble for that too. Do you mind just elaborating a bit more on that?
Because you weren't upfront with the relationship that you were sharing bills with somebody, and you could get penalized for that holding out.
What are some of those penalties?
Pay back the money that they already gave you, or maybe a spend down, or maybe you could get it waived based on your circumstances, but it's a lot of red tape to go through. And luckily for me, when I was in my relationship, I found a job that could support me, so I didn't need the benefit. So I didn't require the benefit. So luckily for me, the chips fell the way they fell for me, and I didn't rely on the benefit.
And you're saying there are people who were not as fortunate. And so you could marry someone with $3,500 in savings, and there goes your stipend.
Yep.
For Social Security. Yeah.
Yep. But as I remember, my self-advocacy journey started even before St. E's. When I was 16, I protested the lack of access to a restaurant. I wanted to have dinner with some people I knew, and they said they didn't have access through the front door because they had stairs. And when I called the restaurant, I said, I want to eat there. How do I get in the restaurant? Oh, you use a wheelchair? You can go in through the kitchen. So I chose to get a group of people with disabilities together who I knew in the Buffalo area and protest the restaurant. Of course, I take it to the nth degree and get myself stuck in the not dry cement on the sidewalk, and the cement dries around my wheels, so they kind of had to jackhammer my chair out of the sidewalk, which was my intent.
Wow. Okay. So first of all, I mean, had you planned to do this at a time when there would be wet cement? Like, how did that?
Well, I knew by watching and observing that the cement was wet because I lived across the street from the place where the restaurant was. So I was watching and I said, that would be a good way to make a statement.
Interesting thought process there.
I'm always thinking 3 steps ahead of what I'm about to do, so I can plan out how to make an impact with what I do.
What was the message you were looking to send?
If you want people with disabilities to come to your restaurant, you need to make it accessible.
One of there are so many threads I want to pull from what you had said earlier. One of them, when you had said that you wanted to be able to love somebody and to not be penalized for it if you chose to be married, right?
Yes.
You're also talking about a situation where you want to enter a restaurant. I'm just thinking of dating being part of the process of getting to know somebody and then develop those relationships to the point where you would be in a place to consider marriage and then hit that barrier. And
yes.
So before diving a bit more into the marriage penalty, I'm just curious, that aspect of this, that those limiting factors to community, like being in community in public spaces, being able to date in that way.
Well, it's all about a person's choice and belief in themselves. Nobody should tell you what relationship you should have just to make themselves feel comfortable, because for me, it was a journey of self-exploration and finding out what I wanted for my life, contrary to what people in my life said. I always went against the grain, it seemed, and that was the way I still live my life today. I push against the grain all the time, or what is considered normal. There is no such thing as normal anymore. Live every day as if it's another day, and if something happens, then it's time to activate.
When you talk about activating, what does that look like for you?
It's just always kind of like, for me, I was born in October. I was supposed to be born in December, and luckily for me, I was a Libra born in October, and my birth sign is the scales of justice. And I always want to tip the scales of justice to fix an injustice. That's what I want to do. That's what I always want to do. Like, if I see somebody being denied or told no, that they can't do something, explain to me why. The answer is no. Because all you need to do is ask why, and if you don't like the answer, you have a right as a U.S. citizen to ask again. And believe me, I will ask the question until it makes sense. I just won't take a no. I'll just keep asking until I get the answer I'm satisfied with, or we have a longer discussion. Like most of the politicians I know, and I'm sure some of the politicians who will hear this who know me will love when I say the first thing I want to do is make you mad at me. to have that uncomfortable discussion, because that's where the real dialogue happens. When you have that uncomfortable discussion, it's not a warm and fuzzy, take a picture with a disabled guy. I'm not one of Jerry's kids. I'm not going to do that.
You're going to have your wheels stuck in wet cement that's hardened around your wheelchair. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not gonna take an opportunity to be a photo op for a politician to say, look, I was with a representative of the disability community. One person does not mean you support a whole disability community. Taking a picture with one person doesn't mean you support a whole disability community, because you haven't taken the time to know their stories.
That goes back to, as you mentioned, about self-advocacy isn't just for one person.
No.
What's at stake here if the marriage penalty continues, BJ?
A lot of people not living the lives that they want, and taking what society expects of them and cheating them out of the best life that they want for themselves, and the right to share your feelings and your love and your emotions with whoever you choose. That's what's at stake here. It's all the marriage penalty and everything else in today's society is all about making choices, and when the choices are robbed from you or not given to you because society seems to think this is the box you belong in, that's where you're going to stay because that's where you're safe. That's not a life. Like I always say, you can never fit me in a box. There's not a box big enough. So I'm not going to do that.
I do want to stick with the stakes because, as you mentioned, I mean, there's dignity as well.
Yeah.
In this. And then there's also the economic hardship.
Yep, the economic hardship and the perception that people with disabilities can't love, which is so far from the truth. People with disabilities have a lot of love to give. You just need to let them give it. And if they want to share it, they'll share it. If they don't, that's their choice. For me, it's all about dignity of risk and choice, because that's what love and relationships is about, dignity of risk and choice.
Dignity, risk, and choice. Yeah.
Yep.
What are some of the challenges now with removing the marriage penalty in the work that you do?
Probably the fear, because people sometimes project their fear of what is going to happen to you onto you, which makes you more fearful instead of going on the journey with them and learning with them.
Who are those people that you're talking about?
Well, it could be a care coordinator. It could be a family member projecting their feelings of, well, you were safe here, why would you want to do this? Well, like I said, it's the person's life, and the family member probably might not live as long as you, and you'll be stuck without the relationship you wanted because you listened to them. When you throw in the concept of a relationship, oh my God, that turns things upside down. Like, you're going to have these feelings. You're going to have these emotions. You might have a breakup. You might have another relationship after the breakup. Well, it's a part of life. Get used to it.
Fair.
You know, it's kind of a weird thing when we live in, as I call it, projection reality, because, you know, I did that for a while. Like, I wanted to be safe. I wanted to be in my bubble. But then I realized, you know, that's not where I need to be, because I don't need to live in that bubble, because that bubble will burst and I won't know what I know now. Because some days the bubble's going to pop.
And I think, I mean, to your point, there's so much value in that, in things not going the way you hope they would.
Yeah.
And then what, right? And then discovering that for yourself. It sounds like that's what's also being taken away from people.
Yes, because hurt is a part of life. Mistakes are a part of life. And if you don't experience that hurt, you can't grow as a human being and move on to the next part of your life because you're stuck in the hurt. You're stuck in the mistake you made because that's what so many people want you to do. They want you to be stuck and reliant on them when you need to rely on yourself. Yes, you need supports. Yes, you need the daily help, but it's always going to be there, the daily help that you need to live the life you want. But to have the life you want, you need to think about what you want for yourself. Forget about what other people think. You're going to make mistakes, and it's fine. God knows I've made many mistakes, and I'm still here. I'm still kicking. I'm still punching, and nothing's happened yet.
What are some of the wins for you?
The wins? Probably one of the biggest wins was the shared space that we have in Western New York, OPWDD and Sandy's office on a bus route. That's probably the biggest win for me because the institutional grounds where the Sandy's office was located was the place became inaccessible by public transportation, so therefore those of us who had to take public transportation couldn't get to work. So that was a big win, and that took 10 years of talking to elected officials, talking to OPWDD, getting community support, and it just took an entire community 10 years to get that win. So that's probably one of the biggest wins for our disability community in Western New York, and one I am the most proud of. So that's probably the biggest win because the wheels of advocacy, you might think move fast, but they move really slow, and you have to be persistent. And I am not patient, so I'm not even going to talk about patience. I'm just going to keep moving the boulder the best I can. I hope people follow behind me.
Patience. I mean, we also have this history throughout the 1900s of institutionalization, of forced sterilization, of eugenics. And to go from that to these threads that still hang on as to the ability to be married, the perception of whether or not somebody is fit to be in romantic and sexual relationships with other adults.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a long history.
Yeah, it's a long history, and you can write your own history, and hopefully your history will influence somebody else's. Like, I hope the stuff I'm doing now, somebody will see it, read it, understand it, and know where I came from, where I'm going, and where I hope to go. I hope they join me, or they find some other group to join in whatever fight they have, and maybe we could all come together to fix one common thing, because there's a lot of things yet to be fixed. And I think one of the things is public perception that people with disabilities belong in the communities in which they live, not just that they're there and they have staff with them. Like I've gone to public places, like I've been in the weirdest place of a bathroom and asked somebody to hold the door open for me when I was done, and one of the responses from one of the people was like, "Where's your staff?" They're not with me at this moment because I'm in the bathroom. I need you to open the door. So could you let me out, please? So that's one of those perceptions that needs to change. People might not need the support of staff all the time. God knows I don't want staff with me all the time because they have their own lives. I have mine. I want to live it without every moment of my life being what I call billable. I just want to live my life the best way I can.
That point of other people kind of seeing it as like not their problem, it sounds like is a theme too.
It sticks with me. It does. Like people with disabilities need to realize that they have value. You have value. You belong in the communities in which you live, instead of being sheltered away and not doing the thing you need to do to have the life you want, because it's your life. You're the only one who's going to live it and make the best of it.
That was BJ Stasio. He's a self-advocate and disability rights activist, and a peer advocate with the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. When we come back, we have a conversation with Stephanie Woodward, a disability rights attorney. Stephanie Woodward wears many hats. She's an attorney, an activist, a mom to 6 kids. She's the co-founder of the Disability Empower Her Network, an organization dedicated to empowering girls and women with disabilities. She also knows a lot about the marriage penalty, what's at stake, and why people with disabilities still face discrimination in some of the most intimate areas of their lives. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Do you mind sharing how you encountered the marriage penalty?
Oh, sure. That's been a conversation in the disability community for a really long time because there's a lot of misconceptions about the disability community. Some big misconceptions about how, like, perhaps a lot of people assume we don't have relationships. We don't have romantic relationships. We don't have intimate or sexual relationships. None of that is true. But there are systems in place that make marriage equality not feel very equal when it comes to the disability community. And this conversation started coming up a lot when we saw that our allies within the LGBT community being able to get married and have that fully recognized, and everyone saying, well, now we have marriage equality in the disability community, like sitting in the back, raising their hands, be like, but what about us? Because we can't get married without risk of losing benefits that literally can keep us alive sometimes.
Do you mind digging in a bit more as to like what is at stake here?
Absolutely. So I find that sometimes it's good to talk about the overall picture and then get into perhaps an example of how this could impact somebody. So when we're talking about benefits, we're not just talking about like a Social Security monetary financial benefit. We're talking about healthcare benefits, which are really important because we live in a world where healthcare is not equal to everybody. So when we talk about healthcare, the disability community is by and large covered through Medicaid. It's one of the biggest payers of people with disabilities for our healthcare needs. And with that, if you go over a certain income threshold, you are no longer eligible for Medicaid. And when you get married to somebody, their income counts towards your income, even if that means you'll be cut off from the insurance that covers you, because other insurers, despite a lot of laws moving forward in our country that say discrimination is not allowed in insurance, there are a lot of ways that it is still very much alive and active. And one of those ways is premium increases based on usage. So if you if I'm a person with a disability and I want to marry someone who runs a small business, that they are now paying for their own insurance through the business, right? If their usage rate goes up, then their premiums go up for the next year. And of course, as a wheelchair user, look at my wheelchair. This is not a cheap little baby. This costs more than most cars, most nice cars. The usage rate would go up for them. So of course, I want to keep my own insurance. I want to keep Medicaid, right? But if I want to keep Medicaid, I can't marry the person I love. And for me, it's a wheelchair. For someone else, think about attendant care services. A lot of people with disabilities can live beautiful, integrated lives in the community, but they need help getting in and out of bed in the morning, perhaps help taking a shower. Medicaid will cover attendant care services. Most private insurances will not cover attendant care services. So this is causing this cycle of poverty that we have to stay poor enough so that Medicaid will cover our attendant care, because if we get too much money, we lose the attendant care, and then we lose our ability to make money, right? So if you lose your attendant care because you married the person you love, how do you get in and out of bed every morning?
Are there any workarounds for folks in the disability community who are, falling in love and want to pursue that?
I mean, I think that there are ways that New York State has attempted to make some things a bit easier. There is a spousal refusal, which is really hard, where essentially we see this a lot when someone needs a nursing facility or attendant care level of care as they age. essentially a spouse has to sign a piece of paper saying, I refuse to care for my other spouse. And we know that that is just a piece of paper, right? It's just a piece of paper you sign saying, I'm not going to take care of my spouse, so that then they can get the care that they need provided through the state. There are so many couples that the spouse that has to sign saying, I refuse, they won't do it. They're like, I've been with them for 60 years and today you want me to sign a piece of paper saying I won't take care of them? Like, there are other ways that people have tried to navigate this, but you're never going to replace what marriage is in our society. We value marriage so much. We value being able to like show off the proposal. How many TikToks have you watched with like, make sure she's not holding her purse so the perfect ring is on in the perfect way, and like waiting for those coming down the aisle pictures, those first kiss pictures, like
those rites of passage.
Those are beautiful moments in a person's life that you're telling disabled people, if you want to live, if you want to have the health care you need, then you can't have that. It's painful to watch as you see your friends who want to get married and instead they say like, oh, I can't marry the person I love, but like maybe we'll have like a little ceremony to celebrate our relationship, which is lovely. And I'm so glad that they are doing that. But we are just as valid of human beings as everyone else. And we should be able to have the same legal rights as everyone else and the same celebrations as everyone else without having to modify it based on disability. That just, it doesn't make sense. And it really devalues the true relationships that disabled people have.
A thought. There's so much that goes into relationships, right? Like there's the dating phase. There's so much more to relationships than just a piece of paper, a marriage license. Can you share a bit? Are there other ways that people with disabilities, when it comes to their relationships, romantic especially, any other barriers that come up?
There's a million, but I'll try to keep it brief with just a few examples because goodness, we could be here for an entire week on this. So one thing that comes to mind for me is that there are some people who are living in congregate group settings who have intellectual or developmental disabilities who are told that they are not allowed to have relationships with other people.
Relationships, what kind of relationships?
Romantic relationships with others. In fact, sometimes, even in New York State, people with disabilities, with intellectual and developmental disabilities, have to take tests where they quite literally have to name the scientific names of different body parts, names that I'm pretty sure, like if you asked the average human on the street, they wouldn't be able to name them for you. Before they can be approved to be consenting to be in a relationship, which is outrageous to me because if you are a person and you have feelings for another person who has similar feelings back, no one's ever tested me to see if I can be in a relationship with someone else. But for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, many of them have had that experience and been told that they can't be in a relationship. Another barrier that can come to mind for me is guardianship. There are people with disabilities who are under guardianship, and that is a whole other topic that we could talk about for a long time with a lot of controversy and intricacies in it. But there are guardians that tell the individuals they are not allowed to enter relationships. They're taking that part of the human experience away and saying that's not even a choice for you to make, not a choice of who you can love or just that you can love. There is someone who wants to be in a relationship and that person has someone who wants to be in that relationship with them and they're told no, and it's not this cute romantic Romeo and Juliet. It is this abusive power saying that you don't get to be in a relationship with the person you love because I don't think you can do it.
Or even explore that part of you.
Yeah.
Or even to see yourself as desirable or to have desire at all.
Absolutely. And like that is a whole area of therapy and of disability studies. Like sex and disability have a lot of bad history because of our society telling us that what we should see in ourselves and what we're not allowed to see in ourselves, and what we're capable of and what we're not. And then you have a current administration that has RFK saying, like, people with autism will never be in real relationships, they'll never have jobs, they'll never live fulfilling lives, which is the exact opposite of what is true, but also the opposite of what we have been working for decades to take away those stigmas and demystify these ideas around disability. But when we insert that back into our ideology, it makes it really hard to pass any laws that would get rid of a marriage penalty, because the idea is, well, why would we get rid of it? You can't get married anyway because disabled people can't get married. You have no interest in having relationships. You can't hold a relationship. You can't have sex. The amount of people who are shocked that I have children and ask me how it is done, and I'm like, is health class illegal where you're from? Because the science is the same. But because I have a disability, I'm questioned about it. Whereas if you said you had kids, people would be like, oh, cool, what are their names? People don't ask me my kids' names. They ask me how they got here.
So, Stephanie, when it comes to disability rights at large, what is the significance of self-advocacy, especially for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities?
I think it's incredibly important because we live in a world where so many people want to talk for disabled people and not listen to disabled people. The amount of people who think that they know what is best for someone else is astounding. But the amount of people who want to sit down and listen to what a person thinks is best for themselves is minimal. And in the disability community, we have a mantra. It's nothing about us without us, which means decisions should not be being made about us without us in the room. And that seems really straightforward, right? Like, you wouldn't want a bunch of men making decisions about women, right? Why should non-disabled people be making decisions about people with disabilities, about our lives? You don't know our lives, you don't live our lives. And I think that's really important to keep in mind in the context of intellectual and developmental disabilities, because there are some people in our communities that like to see a disability hierarchy. Like, oh, I see you're in a wheelchair, but your brain still works. Like, what a statement is that to make? Or someone with an intellectual disability getting a community member saying, well, but at least you can walk. Always kind of pitting us against each other as if, like, if you have one disability, it's better than the other. But there's this assumption that if you have a developmental or intellectual disability, then you don't have the capacity to know what is best for you. And that's just not true. I think that society at large doesn't seem to have the capacity to understand that even if brains work differently, we're still able to have opinions and feelings and thoughts about our own lives, and those should be the utmost priority.
Can you talk a bit more of, like, the risks if the marriage penalty continues?
You have to think about when they pass away, there is no inherent right to survivorship. If you shared a home with somebody, there's not that inherent right that the home goes to the other married party. There's a lot more legal complications that come with all of these things that can impact their partner, their families, their children. It's just a very tangled web that we're weaving that leaves so many people uncertain of what the future holds after they pass away.
Are there other risks here? For instance, I mean, like, relationships can go any direction, really. When they go in an abusive direction, can you speak to that in the frame of
Absolutely. So this is something that I think we don't think about enough, and it can impact so many people. So just for a little bit of background, women with disabilities are 2 to 4 times more likely to be victims of sexual assault and domestic violence as a non-disabled person. And people who are victims of abuse are more likely to acquire disabilities from that abuse. So, like, we just need to put that out there so we understand that the population we're working with is large and susceptible to abuse. And so if in the context of marriage penalty, if I was a person who received Medicaid and I wanted to marry my spouse, or my partner, I wanted them to be my spouse. And I had to say, well, if that's the case, I'm going to lose my Medicaid. So I would also lose any sort of financial subsidy that I would be receiving. So no Social Security, no Medicaid. but I'm going to give that up because I love you so much. We're going to make it work. We're going to figure it out. Me and John, we've got this, right? So I give up my attendant care services. I know it's gone. I give up the Social Security check because who needs $900 a month? Like, I've got John. We're going to make it work together. Now John and I are married. I don't have someone to come and help me. John is my help, right? And you would think that's what marriage is. But John also, when he's upset with me, won't bring me my wheelchair and leaves me in my bed for days. When I tell John I want to leave, he says, well, good luck, because I bring in all the income. Where are you going to go? John is in charge of all of the finances. He would see if I even paid for the bus to go somewhere. When you take away the supports that an individual needs, and marriage, of course, is a partnership, but that doesn't mean your partner should be in charge of every aspect of your life.
Mm. What are some of the solutions you have in mind in terms of removing this penalty, keeping people from being in such dark situations?
I mean, I think that it can be very cut and dry. Like, allow a person's assets to only be counted as their own rather than counting their spouses. Like, that is the most straightforward way to do this. It seems so obvious, and yet our country has a really hard time comprehending this idea that two people can get married and still have separate assets. Like, that's okay. It's not hurting our society to provide that safety net and still allow that person to flourish.
Stephanie, we've covered so much in such a small amount of time. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that maybe we haven't touched on?
I mean, I think I just would encourage anyone to go make friends with people with disabilities. Talk to us. Don't talk to us with any agenda behind it. Just have a coffee with us. You're going to learn so much. And I think that we're all going to be a better community for that.
Stephanie Woodward, thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thanks for having me.
That was disability rights attorney Stephanie Woodward. For more information on self-advocacy, visit our website at movetoinclude.org. You can support this podcast by subscribing or following wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review and share us on social media. We're at Move to Include. This podcast is produced by WXXI Public Media.